How's it going, everybody, and welcome to episode 272 of Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode is one that I've been looking forward to. So, we mentioned every year around this time, we start to get back into the open garden features. And as I mentioned, open gardens are kind of inspirational for people who are gardening at home. They go to these beautiful open gardens. They, generally speaking, talk to the creators of these gardens, and they see things that they can sort of take home and replicate or adapt to their own gardens. So as I say, they're inspirational, these open gardens. And this week I'm heading down to the Cork-Limerick border and I'm talking to Siobhan from the O'Mahony garden. So the O'Mahony garden is developed by Siobhan and Mossy, and it's a garden that has been developed over 35 years. It's a garden that I haven't visited, but really looking forward to hearing the story. Siobhan and Mossy run courses down there as well. So they run things like the summer container course, the vegetables for beginners course, Christmas wreath making courses, and I'm sure many, many more. So yeah, the garden itself seems to be, from looking on Instagram, huge amount of color and all the different windows, but there seems to be a big mix. So we have a new woodland area from what I can see. There's the color of the tulips at the moment, and there seems to be various different areas. So Siobhan is going to tell us all about that now. So Siobhan, you're very, very welcome to Master My Garden podcast.
Thanks, John, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so yeah, we were just talking before we started recording about the beautiful weather we're having. So we're all having a great start to the gardening year. I'm sure it's the same with you guys. Your garden, looking at your pictures on Instagram, is awash with color even at the moment. But it's not something I guess that has just popped up overnight. As your website says, you're developing this for 35 years. So maybe give us a little bit of the kind of backstory of the O'Mahony garden, and we'll talk through the
Oh,
various areas then.
okay. Well, we're here about 35, 36 years. And when we started, really, we just started, we needed to put in shelter because we're quite open. So our first task really was to put in our shelter. So we put in lots of trees and we put in hedging. And then as we started with the main area of the garden, we have five areas to the garden. We have the what we call the original garden, and then we have a little area at the back. And then we had a little vegetable patch, and then we took over the boys' football pitch there a few years ago. And the latest project is the woodland. But I suppose we started gardening really from the first year that we came in. Um, it was developed over the years. I didn't have a lot of time. At the beginning, I was working in Cork, so I was commuting to Cork. So really, I was a summer gardener until about
Hmm.
5 or 6 years ago, and
Yeah, yeah.
then I got really interested. Um, I did Jimmy Blake's Plants Persons course about 5 years ago, and previous to that, I did some classes with Helen Dillon.
All right.
Helen actually was my idol.
Yeah.
I started watching her 35, 36 years ago on television, and I loved her. I loved her planting style, and I loved her color combinations. And my color, I garden by color, and I suppose it started really from seeing Helen's garden. You mentioned there, about visiting other gardens and getting inspiration, and that's where my inspiration came from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great story. It's I suppose it's a kind of common theme that I hear on the podcast. Not necessarily with open garden pe features, but with people who are who are doing nice gardens at their own homes. And you start off, you have a site that's open, and you get the trees around it and the shelter. And a lot of people,
Mhm.
actually, a lot of the open gardens have said that that was the first thing.
Mm.
And so at the start you didn't have much time, which is kind of common at the moment, and probably even more so at the moment. There's so much going on for, I suppose, especially younger families. They've so much going on running around with football and work and all the different things that are going on. And time, people are summer gardeners essentially because of that. But were you interested in gardening from day one, or is it something that has developed over the years?
No, I was interested from day one. My mother actually had a lovely garden, and she was always gardening. And even I remember having, I think even just a tiny patch. I just wanted a tiny patch at home so I could set my own flowers.
Yeah.
So it stems from there. I was just the minute I was more probably more interested in the garden than I was in the house initially,
Yeah.
but made lots of mistakes along the way.
And so when you started out, there was no grand plan. So you're on about an acre, and you got the shelter built in originally. But was there did you have a vision sort of how it would develop, or has the vision
Um,
changed over the years?
we were actually, I suppose, we were gardening for 3 or 4 years, and I suppose I lost a lot of stuff. Like I started by putting in 2 beds of roses,
Right.
and I lost every one of them because of the wind. So after about 3 or 4 years, we went to Late Brian Cross, and he drew up a plan just for the original garden. So at least we had a plan then to work on. That was, again, we could put in beds then and borders as we could afford them.
Yeah.
And Mossy did all the building and the hard landscaping. And
Yeah.
it really stemmed from there. So the first few years, that's what we were working on. We had a plan for just that one area. And
Hmm.
then I suppose that gave us confidence then to start working on the other areas and developing the other areas ourselves.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point that you started off, you don't have a sort of grand plan for the place, but you start planting in roses, you figure out that that's not working, but then you go off
Hmm.
and get your overall plan done, or a sort of a vision done for the place. And then you add in the beds as you can afford, as you said yourself at that
Yeah,
time. And
yeah,
that
absolutely.
and that's quite typical of, people in this situation. And it is a really good thing to do, is to get a design plan, a planting plan, even if it's only a sketch of your
Yeah.
own doing that you have. And it can change and it can maneuver over the years. But if you do have a kind of a grand idea of, this is what I'd like in 10 years' time, and
Hmm.
this is what we can start with. And it gives you something that there's a kind of a progression plan. And as you said, you do one bed, it's successful, and then your confidence grows and you're able to do more, then maybe you're able to start propagating your own plants. So it becomes easier to do these beds, or more
Yes, yeah.
accessible to do these beds. So yeah, that's a great point.
Well, I found at least when you have a plan like that originally, like originally I was going to put the pond in at the bottom of the garden, but in the plan he put it in at the front of the garden so that you could see it.
Hmm.
So at least where we didn't stick to exactly to the planting plans, but we stuck to where we should put the beds, and I think that
Yes.
was a great help.
Yeah. And obviously then you started with roses and they didn't do well. So Helen Dillon has famously said, right plant, right place. I'm not sure if it
Yes,
was if it was her
yes.
phrase originally, but she always said that in her, in her writing and in her TV work. She always said, right plant, right place. And I suppose you started to find out that, and that's kind of different for every garden too.
I think you learn as you go along, and a plant might do very well in a place, and it mightn't do very well in another place, and then you
Yeah.
could buy the same plant and put it somewhere else, and it might do really well. So it's
Yeah.
trial and error, really.
Yeah, and that can be within a garden as well as in
Yes,
in
yeah,
different gardens. So you could have a spot in your garden that something just doesn't do well in, move it to
yeah,
another spot with more suitable conditions, and
yeah.
away it goes, and it can be very successful. So, and it does take a little bit of time probably to figure that out in your own garden. And yeah,
Uh,
it's an important piece as well.
I remember actually buying a verbena, and I really at the time I wasn't really into putting the right place at the right plant to the right place, and I planted this verbena in a damp, shady corner, and wondering later why it died. Now I understand.
Yeah, yeah,
So now I would I may always check the label of a plant and check to see whether it's a sunny or shade, or whether it is dry or wet.
yeah, yeah. No, it's hugely important, and I think that's something maybe that gardeners, beginner gardeners maybe fall down on as well, is that they go into a garden center and they shop with their eyes, and
Yeah.
this looks beautiful, I'll stick that there.
Mhm.
This looks beautiful, I'll
Yes.
stick
Yeah.
that there. As you say, flip around the back of that label, just see,
Yeah.
I prefer full sun. Well, am I getting that where I'm putting it? And it's just little basic things like that can help a lot. So the garden as it is today, pretend I'm going to go on a virtual tour now and arrive at your front door. Maybe talk us through the areas of the garden.
Okay. So the as I said, the original garden is about maybe half an acre. And as I said, we originally put in hedging and trees. Now the hedging back then was Lelande.
Yeah,
And we've started to take that out because it's starting to die back. And so in this area, it's mainly shrubs and trees because I want low maintenance here because there's high maintenance in two of the gardens, where you have the herbaceous beds.
yeah,
So I'm trying to cut down and work in this area. So we have a pond and which is surrounded by azaleas and rhododendrons. We're lucky enough actually. We're neutral to acid soil, so we can grow these plants.
yeah.
So my spring borders, these would be mainly my spring borders. I concentrate on I don't have spring bulbs in all the borders. I concentrate on some of the borders
Yeah.
and plant these up with bulbs. So then there's another bed that it's actually a bed of white hydrangeas and box balls and blue salvias. So that starts in February with lots of snowdrops, and then it has the crocus in February, and then we're on to the tulips at the minute. Now
Mhm.
I'm building the layers of bulbs in these beds. So we'll say at the moment I see the tulips, it needs more tulips, so I'll plant in more tulips next year, and then it's followed by a bed of blue alliums Globemaster. I find
Beautiful.
Globemaster a really good one because it's really good in the wind. It's got good strong stems,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it's followed on by the white paniculata hydrangeas. So I suppose that's the original garden, and then the next garden is what we call our kitchen garden. Now it's not veg, it's not fruit and veg. We call it our kitchen garden because it's just outside our kitchen door.
Okay.
And the color theme, it's circular. It was a curved garden. This is quite a small area. So I was looking, again, you talk about inspiration. I was looking at a magazine one day and I see this beautiful circular garden. I think it was Joe Thompson's garden in Chelsea. And I went out and I changed the lawn to a circle. So it gave us more planting space. So the color scheme really for this garden is all vibrant colors, the oranges, the reds, the yellows,
Yeah.
the purples, really vibrant, a mix of colors.
Kind of your hot border as they call them
Yes,
these days.
yes, because we're looking out at this all the time. So, it's important to have color here all the time. And just outside the patio door, we have a little pond, little water feature, small little circular water feature. Again, I was in Chelsea, 30 years ago, and this is the one thing I brought home from it. I saw this little, I still have the photograph. I brought home this picture of this little pond. So that's what we have there. So that's the circular garden. Um, and then the other big garden, really, the main one is what we call the pitch. And this was the boys' football pitch up to about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So we started by putting in one bed and taking a goalpost, and then we put in, and then took another goalpost and put in another bed. So in this border, it's quite a big area. And again, I started with my curved borders. And initially, I grew lots of herbaceous. As you know, it's quite expensive to buy plants to fill a big border. So I grew lots of the plants from seed, lots of lupins and achilles and things like that. And again, watching TV Gardener's World one night, I was looking at this lovely garden, rectangular, with borders on both sides. So I again went out with the bamboos and the twine and straightened my borders. So it's here then I decided to, put in different colored borders. So one border, probably my favorite border, is this lovely cool colors, the pale pinks, the pale blues, and the whites. So it's really calming border. And then on the other side, we put in peach and salmons. And then to contrast that, we put in, winey and magenta colors. And so again, we're building on these beds and adding more plants all the time. And also in this border then, or in this garden, is a white border. So it's quite difficult to garden in the white border because it is there's a line of lime trees. As I said, it was never meant to be a garden, and if we knew it was going to be a garden, we'd never have put in these lime trees. But anyway, the ground is really, really poor and dry. So it's survival of the fittest here. So I try to put in whatever will grow well. I just add more
Yeah.
of it. So, and then there's a big patio. This is where where we sit out, and we have a really good size patio. And in front of that, then going onto the lawn of two narrow beds. And I was hoping that we could have lavender, two beds of lavender, but obviously we're a heavy clay soil, so lavender doesn't really do well. So I've put in Napata Persian blue,
Oh yeah,
and
brilliant. Yeah.
it gives the same effect. It's like a bed of lavender.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, in these beds, actually, I have lots of roses, believe it or not. But they're
Right.
the shrub roses, and they do really well here. The shrub roses.
Yeah. Can we take a we're going to reverse back through these
Yes.
first three gardens first.
Yeah.
So on these borders, so you mentioned the white border, which is a little bit difficult under the lime trees. You mentioned the salmon type colors. So maybe just give us a flavor of the plants that we're going to find in the salmon color border, in the magenta purple border, and was it a bluey calming border that you
Yeah,
mentioned at the
yeah.
start?
So in the cool colors, in the pale pinks and the blue border, at the moment, I'm looking out here at the moment. At the moment, there is I don't have a lot in any of these borders at the minute because I concentrate on summer color.
Yeah.
So the pink border, there isn't a lot there. There's just Brunnera really at the minute. And following on from that, then I have peonies and lupins, um, Tilictrum, and then following on from that, I would have the roses, Olivia Rose Austin, which is a lovely, really pale rose,
Gorgeous one. Yeah.
and lots of phloxes in here. I love phlox,
Yeah.
the lovely pale pinks and the pale blues, and lots of dahlias in here. So at the moment I have all the dahlias potted up in the tunnel, and I put them out the end of April. So there's lots of the pale pinks and the mauves and the whites dahlias in here. And I also grow antirrhinum from seed. Actually, I planted some of them out now the other day. So I have the pale pink and the white in the pale pink border, and I would have foxgloves in there as well. And I also have, for next month, I would have the sweet rocket.
Oh yeah.
I grow that from seed as well.
Yeah.
So they're the main plants. And then I've dotted, actually in that particular bed, I have a very special plant, and it's a diorama that I got from Helen Dillon's garden.
Wow. Angel's fishing rod.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. And you got that as a little plant, was it?
I got it on her sales table at one of her, when I was up there.
Brilliant, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that'd be nice. And they're a brilliant plant, notoriously slow to grow, but
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. They have to like the spot they're in.
yeah, yeah. I sowed them from seed a few years ago, and I'm
Oh,
not the
they're
most
very slow.
I'm not
Yeah.
the most patient person, and they were sowed at the same time as loads of other things like Achillea and what else was there? The Verbena
Oh
boraniensis
yes, yes,
and
yes.
all of those at the same time. And I was looking at this little tiny
Yeah.
little green stem coming up out of the ground for months and months and months. So no, very, very, you need a lot of patience for them, but when they're fully formed, they're beautiful.
They are amazing. And I love actually, there's a really dark one called Blackbird.
Okay.
It's a really, really dark one. I like these dark colors as well.
Yeah.
But I have one of them. I bought two actually, but one was, they were only across from each other, they're only a meter from each other, but one did really well and the other just died on me. So, yeah, they are finicky.
Yeah, definitely finicky. Yeah, and
Yeah.
funny, there's about 100 meters away from there's an old cottage. It's actually there's nobody living in it anymore, but there's 5 or 6 clumps of Angel's fishing rod up on kind of old stone walls.
Yes,
They're
yes.
absolutely class.
Yeah,
I don't know how long ago they're planted, but they're just class there. Yeah, beautiful.
yeah. They do like poor ground actually, because one self-seeded on my gravel yard.
Right. And
Yeah,
and and grew away there, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Stepping back into the very first garden you mentioned, so you were going for the lower maintenance shrub type rather than the perennial borders, but you're obviously utilizing bulbs to give you that color and some
Oh
hydrangeas and
yeah,
so on.
yeah.
How do you find you mentioned that you're at the moment your tulips are out, but you're looking to build up the stock there. Are you sort of planting tulips every year, or are you looking for the more long-term tulips,
Oh,
or what do you?
the perennial tulips.
Yeah,
I in there at the moment. I have ballerina, and I think Negrita is probably the best. Negrita is brilliant to come back, and I think it's national velvet, which is So I wanted all these velvety colors,
yeah,
but I found that there was something lacking. So actually, I added I grow them. I grow tulips in pots as well. So I'll take them when they have finished flowering in the pots. I'll put them into the bed, but I've put in, I think it's a daydream. Is it daydream? I can't think. Yeah, I think daydream is kind of an orangey yellow, and I tried it now, putting it into the border, and it's after lifting the colors, but
right.
I just need to add more. Like I've more Negrita in pots for my pot display, so I'll transfer them into the beds when they finish flowering, and they'll be there for next year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is, I think that's important. I know a lot of people use tulips for that spring color, and obviously they look class, but the ones that are dying off after one year, it's kind of hard to see how you really should be looking for the ones that are going to come back, the
Oh,
perennial
yeah.
type ones.
Definitely the perennial ones for the borders, and
Yeah,
I buy the fancy ones for the pots. But
yeah,
I'd also grow the perennial ones in the pots so that I can add to my borders wherever there's gaps.
yeah,
And I do the same with the daffodils, and actually daffodils. I only plant the miniature daffodils in the borders, because the way you have to wait for their leaves to die back,
yes,
and the big leaves take too long. So you actually don't notice the miniature leaves.
yeah. And if you're in a windy garden, which I'm sure you're not at this stage um with
It's
your
pretty,
bo
it's windy enough at times.
it's windy enough, is it? Yeah. Well, then the
Yes,
then the smaller ones are obviously
they
are
do.
obviously
They do better.
they're a
Yeah.
little bit sturdier, yeah, for sure. You mentioned Globe Master as your allium. That's another brilliant one.
Yeah. I did put in Purple Sensation, and Purple Sensation didn't, some people talk about Purple Sensation being even a weed, that it spread so much, but I didn't find it did well with me at all. But
Right.
the Globe Master is coming back. It's
Yeah, yeah,
coming back now for the third year, so
yeah.
it's
Brilliant.
a
Yeah,
good test.
brilliant. So, and then the pitch that got changed. You mentioned the different borders there. So we're heading for the fourth garden after that. So where are we heading for now?
Um, the oh yes, it's the vegetable area,
Lovely.
which is raised beds. There's 6 raised beds in there, and I have a little glass house as well. So just getting ready now, really the beds to plant out a lot of the veg. Again, I have uh, the brassicas, the legumes, and then the roots and alliums together. So I think their crop rotation is important. And then in the other beds, I actually have a miniature or a small or a container grown raspberry, and it's
Yeah.
doing really, really well. I did have raspberries out in the ground, and as you know, they just go everywhere. They were coming up
Mm.
everywhere. So I got container grown raspberries from Mr. Middleton online, and they're doing really well. I actually had them in a bucket for the first 2 or 3 years because I had no place for them, and they
Yeah.
still survived. So they produce lots of fruit. And then I have another one with blueberries and another one with strawberries.
And these
And
are all
then
containers,
raised beds actually.
raised beds. Yeah,
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 they're
yeah,
container grown, they're
yeah,
suitable for
yeah.
containers, but they're grown in raised beds. I find the raised beds really easy to garden. And in the glass house, then I grow the tomatoes and the cucumbers and the what else? Peppers.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. And the raspberry that you mentioned, so that is one that, like, anytime anyone puts it into the garden, especially the
Yes.
autumn one,
Yeah.
it goes wild, and you do have to, like, I was only doing that last Saturday myself. I have three autumn gold in a ground bed, and they're popping up 3, 4, 5 meters
What
away.
they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
chopping the ground in between and trying to pull them up. But yeah, it takes a little bit of work to keep manners on them. But container grown ones, the standard varieties in containers, they can be hit and miss. But if you have a variety that's specifically for containers, I'm
Yeah.
sure it
This
does well.
this is a bush variety now, and like I get fruit every year.
Brilliant. And yeah, you probably have to give it a little bit of a feed, I presume,
Oh
early in the
yeah.
season.
Well, the feed I normally use, I feed all the borders. I feed everything with soil renew. Feed the soil, to improve the soil, improve our soil renew. I find that really good because
Yeah.
our soil would have been quite poor here, and this is my fourth year using it, and I find it really good.
That's
And then
interesting now.
yeah,
The reason it's interesting is I've seen the product before, but I've never used it. And a couple of weeks ago at the GLDA conference, I was talking to the man there, and he gave me a sample bag to try. So
yes,
I have
yeah,
tried it on two vegetable beds. Just I didn't put it on them all. I wanted to try it on two just to see could I see
yeah.
any kind of a difference.
Well,
Uh,
I'm using it now with about 4 years, and there's a huge improvement in my soil.
okay.
Um, and it's a bucket, a 10 kg bucket is equivalent of spreading 3 tons of manure. So
Yeah.
this
So
is much easier. This
yeah,
is much easier.
you're getting the benefit of the
Yeah.
microbes and so on, but obviously with a lot less material.
Actually, where I first heard of it was Helen Dillon's, and when I did classes with Helen, I suppose 5 or 6 years ago now, and she was using it, and she said that they used to use it in the botanical gardens. So she said if they use it there, it must be good. But I do, I've like the soil now where I use it, like there's lots of worms and activity, and the soil has really loosened up. So as well as that, then I use my seaweed as well. Um, I use the liquid seaweed quite a lot. And then for the vegetable beds, I would give them an organic fertilizer about a fortnight before I'd start planting anything.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Um, so that's the veg. So we've kind of four of the gardens covered then, and there's a fifth garden.
That's the newest area.
Yeah.
It wasn't even there this time last year. At the end of April, actually, we put it in. It's a woodland, and it's two areas in one really because it's the woodland and there's also a wildflower meadow.
Okay.
And actually, we put in I also do cut flower garden, and I do a cut flower garden workshop. So we do the workshop in February. So we grow all the seed in February, and then it's ready to go out at the end of April. So this year or last year, I've put the cut flower garden into a very long raised bed. So that's in this area as well. So the wildflower meadow, we'll probably set the seed now in another week or two. But I like the wildflower meadow, the classic one, the poppies, the cornflowers.
Yeah.
And there's no grass in the mix. It's just
Yeah.
all flowers.
So are
So
you going
that's
with
what's
a
just
an
beautiful.
annual mix, or are you going with an annual and perennial?
Annual.
So yeah, so you're going to
Um,
do annual and so on a yearly basis. Yeah.
Yeah, last year, we did a small test the year before with just a very small area. But now, what I did last year, I actually collected a lot of my seed. So I have a lot of seed from last year. I'll just probably buy maybe, a packet or two of seed, but I have a lot of the seed gathered from last year. And also here then is the woodland. I love woodland and spring plants. So we put in 28 birches, jacquemontii,
Yeah.
and that's underplanted then. Like there's only a very light canopy on it at the minute, so I'm sure it will take 4 or 5 years, to look
Yeah.
anything. So that's underplanted then with lots of spring bulbs again, hellebores, and lots of woodlandy plants that like shade.
Mm. And so that's the newest area. We might go
Yeah.
back to the wildflower meadow in a second. So
Yes.
it's from looking at it on your Instagram page, you have uh I think it's wood chip pathways through the woodland, is it?
Just no, there's wood chip actually on the side borders,
Oh, is that what it was?
just to
Yeah.
keep down the
Yeah.
weeds. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have these 20 something Jacquemonti's gone in. They're going to grow beautiful over the next few years, tall white stems and underplanted. You have
Yes.
hellebores. What else have you gone in there?
It starts again with snowdrops. I like gathering snowdrops. I like the different varieties, not just for the sake of having so many different varieties, but I just like the different ones. In particular the yellow ones like Spindlestone Surprise and Madeline and these. So I have about 20, I suppose 20, 25 varieties of snowdrop. So
Yeah.
I've planted them all in here. And then it starts again with the crocuses. Put in species crocus, and I've put in what else? Lots of hellebores, yeah, and
Yeah.
ferns. Actually, what I've put in as well for the summer is miniature hydrangeas. I didn't
Oh
want the
yeah.
big hydrangeas because they would be too big. Because I do love hydrangeas, but I've got miniature ones which I think will only grow about 2 feet high. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be nice. Yeah, and that'll be something that'll change over the next few years, and
Yes, yeah,
as you say, as the canopy fills out and it becomes more shaded as a woodland one, you'll see the changes. Brilliant.
yeah.
And the wildflower meadow is annual mix, poppies, cornflowers, and so on. Yeah, that'll be a real pop of color.
Oh, it was amazing last year. Now we did make I suppose a mistake last year in that we tore back all the soil from the topsoil, but actually like we're very rocky. There was rock jutting up in parts of it. So
Right.
we actually had to bring back in some of the soil for this year. So we brought in another inch or two of soil
Yeah.
this year. But
And
yeah, it was amazing last year. It was probably
yeah.
one of my favorite parts of the garden, midsummer.
Yeah, yeah, and we didn't even necessarily have a wonderful summer weather-wise for wildflowers, but still, yeah, you'd have a lot of flower in year one with all those annuals. You mentioned earlier the taking out of the lelandes,
Yes, yeah.
and I think you said it's kind of still ongoing, or there's some taken out, but not them all.
Yeah, there was a Lalande. It was actually dividing the original garden and the football pitch, and so we started taking it out in this area. And by the time we got down to the corner of the football pitch, it was really windy day, and we said if we took the rest of it, we'd have had no shelter.
Hmm.
So what we took out this area, just in the dividing the pitch and the original garden, and we put in a double beach. And so now when we look out of our living room, we're looking down at a seat. We look through the double beach and there's a seat at the bottom, whereas before we were just looking out at this big green blob.
Yeah.
Uh, so in the meantime, then we've planted a white thorn hedge on the farm side of the rest of it. And when this matures, then we'll take the rest of the Lalande.
Yeah. So yeah, I was only talking to somebody about it yesterday about they were taking out Lilandi as well, and yeah, sure, they were all to go and they were recommended by everybody at the time. But
But there wasn't anything available back then, really. It was either green Lalande or yellow Lalande.
yeah, and
You know,
Privet,
there
that
was
was about
very little
it.
choice.
Yeah, there wasn't much choice, and I suppose what people were looking for at that time was they were looking to screen areas quickly, and it definitely did
Yes,
that because it was so
yes.
fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. You could plant a hedge and have it fully formed in 3 or 4 years. It
it
was
was. It was.
amazing.
It was giving shelter in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, which is kind of unheard of really now. There's very little
Oh
else. Yeah,
yeah. Well, the beach we bought actually, we bought beach what 5 foot high, so we've an
yeah.
instant hedge.
Instant
Yeah,
hedge.
we're
Yeah.
buying time at this stage.
Yeah. Um, we mentioned at the start that some of the courses that you're doing. So tell us about some of those. I know you have quite a nice kind of classroom. Is that purpose built, or is that
Um,
something that was
well,
really?
it all just happened accidentally, really. I was a computer teacher and for adult education, and I suppose we were always at break time. We were always talking about gardening or whatever. And a few of the girls asked me, would I give gardening classes? So it was at the back of my mind. So then one day, one of the girls said, Siobhan, would you really start these gardening classes? We'd love it. So
Mhm.
I went off that day and I organized it, and we started in the hay barn. So actually, I had one class done before COVID, and then COVID hit.
Right.
So then the hay barn was ideal because it was, well
Open.
ventilated, and people just came dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
So after a year or two, then we see that the numbers were getting bigger. So Mossy converted an old shed into a classroom. So
Brilliant.
the main course that I run really is it goes from February until October, just once a month, one morning a month. And the idea behind this is that people would see the progression in the garden. Going back, I did Jimmy's course myself,
Yeah.
and it was ideal because I thought it was a great idea. You actually see the progression in the garden, and people can see actually rather than just just hearing about it.
Yeah.
So that's the most popular course. And in a class I start with a slideshow, so it might be something on designing, or it might be maybe feeding plants this month, and I also take a group of plants that might be annuals or biennials. So we do a slideshow for the first hour, and then we spend an hour outside around the garden, seeing what's in flower this month. And then we do some practicals. So whatever's to be done this month, like I have a class now tomorrow, and we'll be pruning hydrangeas. We'll be pricking out seedlings that we did last week. We'll be taking basil cuttings from lupins. And so we do some practical every month as well. And then, of course, we have the tea. So it's quite a social occasion as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Sounds great. And other courses that you mentioned earlier on, your uh, vegetable for
The oh,
beginners.
the workshops are just once off. If somebody
Okay.
wants
Yeah.
to concentrate on something. So we start in February with the cut flower garden, because that's really when you start planting your seeds for your cut flowers. And I used to do wedding flowers, years ago. Um, I used to do the churches and the bouquets and things. So I always had an interest in flower arranging. So nowadays it's being more sustainable to grow your own. So we have that workshop in February. So it covers really from sowing seed going right through to arranging your flowers and making a hand-tied bouquet. And then in May, oh yeah, last weekend and the weekend before then, people were asking me, would I do something on vegetable gardening? So I did a vegetable gardening for beginners
Lovely.
workshop. And then in May, coming up next month, I have summer container gardening.
Yeah.
Again, I think container gardening is great for people. They mightn't have the time or they mightn't have the health for
Yeah.
your normal gardening. So you can still have a garden with your container gardening. So we concentrate on summer containers and putting the colors together and the different flowers that we can use. And then in September, I have a bulb workshop because again, September is the time you buy all your bulbs for spring.
Hmm.
So we have a bulb workshop and they create their own bulb lasagna to take home.
Brilliant.
And then last year somebody asked me would I do Christmas wreaths and that went down a bomb.
Good.
So yeah, so
Brilliant. Yeah,
that's it, I suppose.
the container basket one is an interesting one, isn't it? Because all of the open gardens or any of the open gardens that you can think of, they all utilize containers very well, even though they have huge and fabulous gardens as well. So, like I think of, you know, TJ Maher's garden, the pots in the courtyard there are phenomenal. So they all utilize those. So it is container gardening and staging of pots. As you say,
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
lot easier to do, and you can have something that looks different probably 3 or 4 times a year, different windows, different plants, and you can swap them in and out, and you can
yeah.
always have something that looks beautiful right outside your back door or your patio door or your window or whatever the case may be. So yeah,
So I
that
normally plant into plastic pots and then place the plastic pots into the ceramic pots.
yeah,
So
brilliant,
once
yeah,
something has gone over, like some of the tulips are gone over already, so I just take away that pot
and
and
pop in another one.
pop in another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have two for this time of the year. I would have just two main pot displays really, one outside the kitchen door and one outside my living room door.
Yeah,
One is pink. Again, I garden by color,
yeah,
and one is a yellow display and one's a pink display.
yeah, brilliant. So it sounds like loads to see down there. Something for every month as well, and then the different styles of gardens. So your lower maintenance, but still with color, shrub and bulb, I guess, mix. Then your vegetable garden, your pitch, which is now converted into several different colored borders, and now your new woodland and wildflower meadow. So there's loads of kind of different types of gardens, areas of interest there.
Well, the thing is, somebody can come and say, well, some people come and they say, well, I like the circular garden. I'd like to bring that one home. Some people would say they like the woodland. More people would like they can take a section of the garden and create it in their own space.
Yeah. And just given that you started and you said you made your mistakes with the roses at the very start. Any tips for someone that would be kind of starting out on creating their garden? What would you say?
Well, in my classes at the moment, I have a really good mix of people. I have people that have just retired that want to cut down on maintenance, and I have younger people that are just starting from scratch, but they may have not have a lot of time. So what I suggest is um, people starting off that don't have a lot, or anybody that don't have a lot of time, put in your some nice trees and put in nice shrubs. And I like beds of shrubs as well. The same shrubs, maybe a bed of hydrangeas, the mop head, or a bed of the paniculatas, because these are easy maintenance and you can
Hmm.
mulch them. And then keep an area of color around your house. It can be a bed around your patio, or it can be a container garden in your patio, and you can concentrate on your color and your work there. But there's no point in putting in all these colorful fancy borders if you can't maintain them. Put in one colorful border that you can maintain, and the rest put in your trees and shrubs that are low maintenance.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant advice. It's actually something that we've probably talked about a good bit on. Some of those things we've talked about on the podcast quite a lot is, the staging where you're slipping in and out the pots of your
Yes.
ceramic pots, getting color close to where you can see it, so that you can always be looking at something nice, but it's easier to maintain. And definitely what you said at the very start there was to add in trees and shrubs to give a kind of a structure initially
Mhm.
So yeah, they're all brilliant tips.
And then you can add little areas of interest, like you can pop in a bird bath, or you can pop in. I have lots of seats. I think it's nice to have seats or
Yeah.
benches around the garden that you can just sit and enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that I think that is another important one is that you can have this gorgeous garden, but to have seats and somewhere where you can sit down and enjoy it and take it in is quite important as well. Yeah, so brilliant, brilliant tips there. Where can people find O'Mahony Gardens? So tell us about, open days, courses coming up, how people can contact you to find out more or whatever.
Actually, John, all the information is on o'mahonygarden.com. We have a website, and in there's a list of all the classes and actually what's the contents of each class.
Yeah.
And there's also a section there on open days. We just have 3 open days in the year at the minute. So there's the first Sunday of July, the first Sunday of August, and the first Sunday in September.
Okay. So three
And
open day, 3 open days, and do you need to pre-book or do you just arrive?
no, no, no. Again, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook. So coming near the time, I'll put up, an advertisement that it is opened,
Yeah.
and at 11 to 4 on these 3 Sundays. So no, you don't have to book, just turn up.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'll put the link to the website in the show notes anyway, but keep an eye on the website, on the
Instagram
Instagram
and
page.
Facebook,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you'll get more information as the time goes on around courses and open days and so on. Sounds like a garden really worth visiting for everyone. There's loads of practical advice there as well. So yeah, it's been a really interesting chat, Siobhan, and thank you very, very much for coming on Master My Garden podcast.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Melon.
So that's been this week's episode. Huge thanks to Siobhan for coming on. Really interesting information and lots of kind of tips and things that we would have actually previously mentioned on the podcast, which is great to hear. Setting up your structure initially, getting a sort of a master plan to work to that can change over time, but at least it gives you something that you're getting a little bit of structure and you have something to be working towards all the time. Sounds like a beautiful garden, the different areas, there's something of interest for everyone. So the new woodland area, the wildflower meadow, annual wildflower meadow, and then the different borders, all with the different colors and color themes through it. The planters area and the low maintenance one, I think, is one that's going to be interesting for people as well. A lot of the shrubs creating a sort of a structure there, and then the bulbs giving you that little pop of color and interest at various times of the season. So loads of interesting stuff there, and definitely a garden worth checking out. So that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.